Princess Zilara, the most beautiful and powerful being in the galaxy, sat alone in her grand chamber, her gaze fixed on the stars outside the window. The endless sea of darkness seemed to stretch on forever, just like her loneliness. Her kingdom was vast, her power unmatched, yet there was one thing she could not conquer: the emptiness in her heart. For years, suitors from every corner of the galaxy had arrived at her palace, eager to win her favor. They'd brought gifts of unimaginable wealth, offered her planets to rule, and swore to protect her with their lives. But none of them had been able to reach her heart. None of them were good enough. Zilara had rejected them all. Her father, the king, often spoke to her about the importance of marrying well. "The future of the kingdom depends on alliances, Zilara," he would say. "You must choose wisely." But Zilara didn't care for alliances or political games. She had seen enough of them to know they meant little when it came to true happiness. No one had ever made her feel alive, truly alive. Every prince, every lord, every captain of warships had only ever left her feeling more alone. She longed for something more. Not gold, not power, but a deep connection. A partner who could see past her crown, past her beauty, and understand her. A person who could stand beside her, not just because of her status, but because they genuinely cared. Yet every suitor she met seemed more interested in her title than in her heart. As she sat by the window, the soft light of the distant stars casting shadows across her room, she sighed deeply. She often wondered if she was destined to be forever alone. Her royal duties demanded so much of her, leaving little room for personal desires. Every attempt at finding love had ended in disappointment. Just as Zilara turned to leave the window, her communicator beeped, breaking the silence of the room. She turned back toward the screen, expecting another political message. But what she saw on the screen would change everything. A human ship, small, unknown, and distant, was heading straight for her world. Intrigued, Zilara's curiosity was instantly piqued. Who would come to her world, of all places, and why? She couldn't have known it yet, but this tiny human ship would soon alter the course of her lonely life forever. Zilara paced back and forth in her chamber, the soft hum of her palace's high-tech systems surrounding her as she contemplated the strange human ship approaching her planet. Her advisors were already working tirelessly to analyze the vessel, but none could make sense of its purpose. The communication system had received nothing but silence, yet the ship continued its course with unwavering certainty. Her mind, however, was far from the ship. It drifted to the endless parade of suitors who had come and gone in her life. Each one, more impressive than the last, had tried to impress her with grand gestures, promises of power, and devotion that appeared genuine. Yet, to Zilara, they were all the same. A part of her had hoped, perhaps naively, that someone would break through her cold exterior, someone who would make her feel more than just a princess. But each rejection only deepened her belief that true love was a myth. She remembered the last suitor, Prince Arian, a warrior from the neighboring planet of Syra. His fleet had conquered several systems, and he had come to her with an army of soldiers and an offer to strengthen their alliances through marriage. His presence was imposing, but Zilara had seen through it. His eyes spoke of nothing but ambition, and despite his impressive credentials, he lacked the one thing she needed: authenticity. "I do not need more power, Prince Arian," she had told him coldly as he knelt before her. "I need someone who sees me as a person, not just a means to an end." He had left with a scowl, offended by her rejection. But to Zilara, his departure was merely another reminder of how alone she truly was. She had heard it all: promises of everlasting love, oaths of protection, and stories of sacrifice. But none of it had ever moved her. She was untouchable, a queen in her own right, isolated in her tower of superiority. Her father had been disappointed by every rejection, insisting that the kingdom's future depended on a political marriage. Yet, Zilara could not bring herself to accept someone who did not challenge her, someone who could not offer her the real connection she longed for. Days passed in the palace with the same cycle. endless meetings, dull conversations, and the dull ache of loneliness. It was in these moments that she realized, for all the grandeur of her life, she had become trapped in a gilded cage. All the suitors who had come to court her were no different. No one had ever truly understood her desires, her dreams, or the emptiness that gnawed at her soul. It was during one of these lonely moments, standing by her chamber window looking out at the stars, that she was interrupted by a sharp ping from her console. A new message was incoming, and the system had marked it urgent. Zilara was hardly ever disturbed by messages of this nature, but she couldn't ignore this one. The message flashed on the screen. Human ship, incoming. Zilara's heart skipped a beat as she stared at the image of the human vessel, small yet determined, heading toward her home planet. It was so unlike any ship she had ever seen. She had heard of humans, primitive beings with a warrior-like spirit, but their technology was nothing compared to that of the higher races. They were supposed to be insignificant in the grand scheme of the galaxy, no match for the might of the elite. But something about this ship felt different. There was no threat in its movement, but a quiet purpose. Zilara found herself intrigued in a way she hadn't felt in years. Could it be that these humans had something no one else had? She dismissed the thoughts racing through her mind. It's just another ship, probably lost in the vastness of space, she told herself. But deep down, something told her that this time, things would be different. Zilara felt a sudden wave of excitement mixed with uncertainty. She had rejected every suitor, every attempt at connection. Yet here was something entirely new. A human ship, seemingly insignificant yet so bold in its journey. Could this be the answer she had been waiting for, or was it just another fleeting illusion? She couldn't yet know, but she couldn't ignore it either. Zilara stood in the heart of her palace, her mind racing. The human ship was getting closer, and the more she thought about it, the more she felt an odd pull toward it. She was no stranger to the intricacies of galactic politics, but this was something else, something entirely new. The mystery surrounding this ship was unlike any she had encountered before. Her advisors had tried to explain it away. It's a rogue ship, Princess, a human vessel, most likely lost in space, trying to find its way back to civilization. But Zilara wasn't so sure. There was something about the trajectory of this ship, the way it headed straight toward her planet, as if it knew where it was going. No distress signal, no sign of panic, just a calm, determined journey. She ordered the royal fleet to prepare for a welcoming. But it wasn't a military operation. There was no need for weapons, only observation. Zilara wanted to know who these humans were, what they sought, and why they dared to come to her world. As the ship drew closer, the palace screens began to show clearer images. The ship was unlike any other in the galaxy. It was small, almost fragile-looking compared to the massive warships she was used to seeing. It was sleek, with a design that suggested practicality rather than grandeur. And there were no advanced weapon systems visible. Why would a human ship come here, so far from their known colonies? She wondered aloud. Her voice echoed in the empty room as she gazed at the screen, entranced by the sight. Zilara had studied the human race only briefly in her youth, but her knowledge of them was limited. They were known for their resilience and courage, but also for their unpredictability. What would a human want with her? The ship's communications flickered to life, and Zilara's heart skipped a beat. A voice, though somewhat distorted, crackled through the speakers. It was a man's voice, calm and confident, but there was an underlying tension in it. "We come in peace. My name is Captain Jake Williams. We seek no harm, only to understand. I request to speak with Princess Zilara." The words were simple, but the effect they had on her was anything but. Zilara's heart raced as she processed the message. This was a human, Captain Jake Williams, requesting to speak with her. She had never met a human before, and now one was asking for her personally. It was too strange, too out of place. Her immediate instinct was to reject him, to send him away just as she had done with so many before him. But something stopped her. There was something in his voice, something that spoke to her beyond the surface. a quiet confidence that felt real. Zilara stood, her eyes glued to the screen as she stared at the image of the small human ship, now hovering just outside the atmosphere of her planet. It looked insignificant, almost fragile against the vastness of space. Yet she couldn't shake the feeling that this was no ordinary encounter. This ship had made its way across galaxies to find her. The room was silent as Zilara thought about her next move. The idea of meeting someone so different intrigued her. She had always wanted something more, something real. Perhaps this was her chance. But there was a part of her that remained cautious. Could a human, so far from their home, truly offer her what she needed? Could this simple man, with his fragile ship, understand her world? The screens blinked again, and Zilara's advisors filled the room, urging her to make a decision. "Princess, you must act quickly. The ship is preparing to land." Zilara turned to them, her face unreadable. She had made up her mind. "Prepare for an audience," she said, her voice steady but filled with an unspoken tension. "I will meet Captain Jake Williams." As she left the room, her heart pounded in her chest. She had no idea what this human could offer her, but one thing was certain: this meeting would change everything. The moment of truth was coming. Would this be the connection she had longed for, or would it just be another fleeting moment in her long, lonely life? As the human ship descended into the atmosphere, Zilara stood on the balcony of her palace, overlooking the vast fields below. The wind gently rustled her royal cloak as she waited, her heart racing with anticipation. The entire planet seemed to hold its breath in anticipation of this moment, an encounter with a species she had never met. The human ship, small and unassuming, finally touched down in the royal landing zone, a clear contrast to the grandeur of the palace surrounding it. The metallic hum of the ship's engines powered down, and a heavy silence fell over the grounds. Zilara could see the silhouette of the captain standing on the ship's ramp, waiting. A mix of curiosity and skepticism coursed through her. What did this man want? She had rejected every suitor who came before her, yet here she was, about to meet someone from a distant, unknown race. Could this human be different? Zilara's advisors surrounded her, their voices low and filled with concern. "Princess, be careful. We do not know what their true intentions are," one of them warned. But Zilara, her expression calm and unreadable, held up her hand, signaling them to quiet down. "I will decide for myself," she said with quiet authority, her eyes fixed on the human ship below. The decision was already made. She would meet this captain face to face. She needed to understand who this human was, what had driven him to come to her world, and why he felt so different from all the others. With a final glance at the ship, Zilara turned and made her way to the landing platform. Her heart pounded louder with each step as she descended the palace steps and approached the small vessel. The air was thick with tension, but Zilara held her composure. The ramp of the human ship lowered slowly, and there he stood, Captain Jake Williams. He was taller than she had imagined, dressed in a simple but well-worn uniform. His dark brown hair ruffled slightly in the breeze, and his deep blue eyes locked with hers the moment she stepped into his line of sight. Zilara couldn't help but notice the confidence in his posture. But there was something more, something beneath the surface that drew her in. Jake Williams was no prince, no warlord, but there was an undeniable magnetism about him. Unlike the other suitors who had come to her with empty words and promises, he carried an aura of humility, yet strength. A strange, almost magnetic force pulled her toward him. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Zilara simply studied him, trying to read his expression, searching for any hint of his true intentions. Finally, Jake broke the silence, his voice calm and steady. "Princess Zilara, I'm honored to meet you," he said, his words sincere but with a hint of wariness, as though he didn't quite know what to expect either. He took a step forward, extending a hand toward her. Zilara glanced at the outstretched hand, then slowly raised her gaze to meet his eyes. There was no arrogance in his demeanor, no desperation to impress her. It was as if he was simply here, standing before her as an equal, awaiting whatever would come next. After a moment's hesitation, Zilara accepted his hand, her fingers brushing against his. The contact sent an unfamiliar spark through her. She quickly withdrew her hand, trying to mask the strange feeling that had just surged through her chest. What was that? She shook the thought away, focusing on the present. I must admit, Captain, I was not expecting a human to come to my world, let alone request an audience with me, Zilara said, her voice steady. She couldn't let him see how unsettled she felt by this encounter. She had to remain in control. Jake smiled slightly, his eyes softening as if he could sense the uncertainty in her tone. I understand, Princess, but I came for more than just a diplomatic visit. We need your help. Zilara raised an eyebrow, intrigued. My help? She crossed her arms, her gaze sharp. What could I possibly help you with, human? You are far from your own kind, and I am not in the business of offering help to strangers. Jake's expression grew serious, his voice dropping a little lower. It's not just any help. We've come to find something ancient, and we believe it's on your planet. Zilara's mind raced. Ancient? On her planet? Her world had always been a place of beauty and mystery, but it held no great secrets as far as she knew. She couldn't help but feel a flicker of curiosity. She hadn't expected this kind of request. Why would you think such a thing? And what makes you think I would help you? Zilara asked, her tone even but with a slight edge of suspicion. She had learned over the years to guard her trust carefully. Many had tried to use her for their own gain, and she wasn't about to fall into that trap now. Jake didn't flinch. Instead, he stepped closer, his voice steady, yet urgent. Because I know your people, your history, and I believe that the key to saving my people lies in something hidden here, something only you can access. Zilara narrowed her eyes, her mind now spinning. She didn't know if she could trust this human, but there was something about him that felt genuine. His words resonated with something deep inside her, something she hadn't felt in a long time. The spark of intrigue, of hope that maybe, just maybe, this encounter was not random. She took a deep breath, her decision hanging in the air. Very well, Captain Williams. I will hear you out. But know this, my patience is not endless. If you waste my time, there will be consequences. Jake nodded, the seriousness in his expression matching hers. I understand, Princess, and I assure you, I wouldn't be here if I didn't believe this was important. Zilara studied him carefully. She had no idea what this human wanted, but for the first time in a long while, she felt like she was facing something. Someone who could challenge her. And maybe, just maybe, he would be the one to finally break through her heart of ice. The adventure was only just beginning. Zilara led Captain Jake Williams through the grand halls of her palace, her thoughts swirling with questions and uncertainties. The idea of something ancient hidden on her world seemed absurd, yet she couldn't dismiss the strange sincerity in Jake's eyes. There was something compelling about him, something that made her want to trust him, even if she didn't fully understand why. They entered a quiet room deep within the palace, one that Zilara used for private matters of state. The walls were adorned with ancient texts and artifacts, some dating back millennia. The air was thick with history, the weight of her ancestors' legacies pressing down on her. She motioned for Jake to sit, and as he did, she took her place across from him. So tell me more, Captain, Zilara began, her voice steady, but with a hint of curiosity. What exactly are you looking for? What is this ancient secret you claim is on my planet? Jake leaned forward, his face earnest. We believe it's an artifact, a relic from an ancient civilization, long forgotten. My people, we've been searching for it for years. The legends say that it has the power to heal and even prevent destruction. And we've traced its last known location here, on your world. Zilara's brow furrowed. She had never heard of any such artifact, at least not in the records of her kingdom. Yet she couldn't deny the look of determination in Jake's eyes. He was not lying. She could sense that much. But the idea of an ancient relic tied to her planet was both intriguing and unsettling. "I still don't understand," she said, leaning back in her chair. "If this artifact is so powerful, why would it be hidden on my planet? And why would it come to light now?" Jake hesitated, his eyes darkening. "Because our enemies are searching for it too. If they get their hands on it, they'll use it for destruction. The artifact is far too powerful to fall into the wrong hands. We came here to stop them, and we need your help to find it first." The weight of his words sank into the room like a heavy stone. Zilara's heart quickened. She had spent years building her kingdom, defending her people from outside forces. Now, a new threat had appeared, one that wasn't from her world, but from beyond. The stakes were higher than she had realized. "Who are these enemies?" Zilara asked, her voice sharper now, as the realization hit her that this wasn't just about some old legend or ancient treasure. This was about survival, hers, Jake's, and the future of the galaxy. Jake paused, collecting his thoughts before speaking. "They're from a distant system, one that has mastered dark technology. They call themselves the Draxan, and they seek to control the galaxy through fear and domination. They want the artifact because it has the power to manipulate energy on a massive scale. If they succeed in finding it, no one will be safe." Zilara felt a cold shiver run down her spine. The Draxan. She had heard whispers of them before. Rogue factions, merciless in their ways, and notorious for wiping out anyone who stood in their path. The idea that such a destructive force might be hunting for something on her world was terrifying. "What makes you think the artifact is here?" she asked, trying to ground herself in logic. "And how do you know I can help you find it?" Jake met her gaze. "We have a map, a set of coordinates that point to an ancient temple beneath your planet's surface. It said that only the true heir of this world can access its chambers. I studied your people's history, Princess, and I believe you are that heir." Zilara's eyes widened. Heir. She had always known that her royal bloodline was steeped in ancient traditions, but never had she been told of any special connection to some hidden secret. She had always been told her power came from her strength, from the line of rulers who had protected the galaxy. But this was something else entirely. "The heir of my world," she repeated, her voice a mix of disbelief and curiosity. "And you believe that this map will lead us to the artifact?" Jake nodded. "I do. The map has been passed down for generations among my people, and the coordinates are specific to your planet's ancient geography. I know we're close, but we need to act quickly. The Draxan will be here soon, and they're more than just a threat. They're a certainty." Zilara's mind raced. The weight of Jake's words settled on her shoulders. She wasn't just a ruler anymore. She was now part of something far greater than her kingdom, something that could alter the future of the galaxy itself. The thought terrified her, yet it also sparked something deep within, a sense of purpose, of a challenge she hadn't felt in years. She stood abruptly, pacing the room as her thoughts spun in a whirlwind. Could she really trust this human? Could she risk everything to uncover a secret that even her own people might not understand? But the truth was undeniable. She had always felt something missing in her life, something that couldn't be explained by the politics and power struggles that defined her existence. This mission, this secret, might just be what she had been waiting for. Turning back to face Jake, Zilara made her decision. "I will help you find this artifact, Captain. But know this, if we fail, the consequences will be on both of us." Jake's face softened, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "I understand, Princess, and I promise you, we won't fail." As they prepared to embark on their journey to uncover the hidden artifact beneath the planet's surface, Zilara couldn't shake the feeling that this would be the beginning of something extraordinary. And with that thought, she took the first step into an unknown future, alongside a human whose presence had already begun to challenge everything she had ever known. The search for the ancient secret had begun, and nothing would be the same again. The air was thick with tension as Delara and Captain Jake Williams made their way toward the ancient ruins. Hidden beneath the surface of her planet, the temple had been untouched for centuries, if not millennia, and only whispered legends spoke of its existence. For as long as Delara had been alive, her people had never spoken of such a place. Yet, here they were, about to enter its depths. The path to the temple was treacherous, winding through thick, ancient forests and narrow ravines. The journey was slow, but the urgency to reach the temple grew with every passing moment. Delara couldn't ignore the feeling of being drawn into something beyond her control. Each step felt like it carried the weight of destiny, her destiny, and that of the galaxy. As they approached the temple's entrance, Delara's heart beat louder in her chest. The air grew cooler, and the surrounding trees seemed to close in on them, as if guarding the secrets hidden within. The entrance was a massive stone archway, overgrown with vines, ancient symbols carved into its surface. It looked as if it had been waiting for centuries for someone to uncover its mysteries. Jake looked to Delara, his expression focused. "We're close. The map's coordinates brought us here, but we'll need your help to get through. There's no telling what kind of defenses lie inside." Delara nodded, feeling a sense of responsibility she hadn't felt in years. She had always been surrounded by protection, her palace, her people, her guards, but now she was alone with Jake, venturing into the unknown. She didn't know what awaited them, but she knew one thing. This wasn't just about finding an artifact. It was about unlocking something deep inside her, a hidden part of her heritage she had never known existed. As they stepped through the archway, the air became thick with a strange energy, and the atmosphere inside the temple felt both ancient and alive. The walls were covered in glowing symbols, their meanings foreign to Delara. Yet there was something familiar about them. She could almost sense the power pulsing within the stone itself. Jake led the way, his hand resting lightly on a set of controls built into the wall. The light from his small handheld device cast eerie shadows, illuminating the intricate patterns that seemed to shift as they moved. Delara's eyes darted around, sensing an unseen presence in the temple. It was as if the place was alive, watching them. "The map shows a chamber ahead," Jake said, his voice low and careful. "But the entrance is sealed. We'll need your blood to open it." Delara paused, her eyes narrowing in suspicion. My blood. She had been told her bloodline carried power, but never had she imagined it might hold the key to an ancient secret. Was this truly the reason why the human captain had sought her out? Was her heritage truly tied to something so profound? Jake met her gaze, his face serious. "The legends say that only the blood of the true heir can unlock the inner sanctum of the temple. You are that heir, princess. Your blood will trigger the mechanism." Delara hesitated for a moment, but the truth was undeniable. Her blood, her lineage, was special. It had always been a source of power, both feared and revered across the galaxy. She had known that it made her different, but now she was beginning to understand just how different. Stepping forward, Delara extended her hand to the wall. A small groove appeared, revealing the hidden slot. She placed her palm into it, and within moments, a sharp, cold pain shot through her arm. The wall seemed to pulse as the symbols glowed brighter. It felt as if the entire temple was coming alive, reacting to the blood that had been released. A low rumble echoed through the chamber, and the stone doors before them began to slowly open, revealing a vast, dimly lit chamber beyond. It was enormous, far bigger than Delara had expected. In the center of the room was a pedestal, atop which lay a glowing artifact, pulsing with an otherworldly light. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The room felt like a tomb, yet it also felt like a birthplace. Delara's heart raced as she stepped forward, drawn to the artifact as if it called to her. But before she could reach it, a sudden sound echoed from behind them. An ominous thud, followed by the scraping of boots against the stone floor. Delara's hand instinctively went to her side, where her weapon should have been. But she quickly realized that they weren't alone. The Draxen had arrived. From the shadows, figures emerged, tall, armored, and their eyes glowing with a malevolent light. They were the enemies Jake had warned her about. Cold, calculating, and ruthless. Their weapons were drawn, and they moved with purpose, surrounding Zilara and Jake. "You should not have come here," a voice rumbled from the leader of the Draxen. His voice was deep, distorted, and full of menace. "The artifact belongs to us." Zilara's pulse quickened, but she didn't back down. She was the heir. She had come this far, and she wasn't about to give up without a fight. Jake stepped forward, placing himself protectively in front of her. "We're not leaving without the artifact. You won't take it from us." The Draxen leader sneered. "You are foolish, human. We are beyond your strength." Zilara's mind raced. She couldn't let them take the artifact, not when they were this close. She could feel the power in the room, the hum of the ancient energy. It was as if the temple itself was willing her to act. With a swift motion, she reached out, her hands touching the artifact. The room seemed to explode with light, and the Draxen shrieked in fury as the energy from the artifact surged. It was more powerful than anything Zilara had ever felt. But she wasn't alone. Jake was beside her, his strength, his resolve, matching hers. Together, they could protect this power. Together, they could stop the Draxen from taking control. The battle was about to begin, and Zilara knew that this moment would decide not just the fate of the galaxy, but her own destiny. The temple trembled beneath them as the glowing energy from the artifact surged, bathing the room in a brilliant, pulsating light. Zilara felt it deep within her chest, the power of the artifact thrumming with life, calling to her as if it were a part of her. The Draxen leader's eyes widened, and the others around him snarled in frustration as they struggled to maintain their composure. "We will not let you take it," Zilara shouted, her voice steady but filled with the weight of a power she had never known she possessed. Jake stood at her side, his stance protective, but there was no fear in his eyes. "We fight together," he said, his voice firm. As if responding to his words, the artifact's energy seemed to intensify, its light expanding, pushing the Draxen back. The leader growled in frustration, raising his hand. His soldiers tightened their grip on their weapons, ready for a fight. Zilara could sense the danger in the air, the tension thick with the promise of violence. Before any of them could make a move, the Draxen leader charged forward, his armor gleaming in the light as he raised a weapon crackling with dark energy. Zilara reacted instinctively, moving with a speed and grace that surprised even herself. She dodged his attack, her hand reaching for a hidden blade at her waist. In the blink of an eye, she was upon him, her movements fluid and precise. She had been trained for combat since she was young, but now, with the energy of the artifact coursing through her, she felt stronger, faster, more alive than ever before. Her blade met the Draxen leader's weapon with a resounding clash, sending sparks flying. Jake moved quickly to her side, his own weapon drawn, blocking a strike from another Draxen soldier. "Stay close, princess," he shouted, his voice unwavering even as the battle raged around them. Zilara nodded, her focus never wavering. She was no longer just a princess, she was a warrior, fighting not just for her own survival, but for the future of her world and the galaxy. With each strike, she felt more connected to the power of the artifact, its energy flowing through her, guiding her movements. The Draxen soldiers attacked in waves, relentless in their pursuit of the artifact. But Zilara and Jake fought as one, their movements synchronized, each covering the other's blind spots. Zilara's blade danced through the air, cutting down one soldier after another, while Jake's strikes were precise and deadly. Together, they made a formidable team, their strength and determination enough to push back the Draxen forces. But the leader of the Draxen was not so easily defeated. He was a towering figure, skilled in battle, and his rage seemed to fuel his every movement. With a roar, he lunged at Zilara again, this time with a brutal, overhead strike meant to cleave her in two. Zilara's heart raced, and in that instant, time seemed to slow. She could feel the power of the artifact guiding her, urging her to act. She sidestepped the leader's attack, her hand gripping the hilt of her blade tightly as she spun behind him. With a swift, fluid motion, she thrust the blade into the gap in his armor, striking with precision at the weak spot she had identified earlier. The Draxan leader let out a scream of rage and pain as he staggered back, clutching at his chest. Blood oozed from the wound, but even as he fell to his knees, he glared up at Zilara, his eyes filled with hatred. "You may have won this battle, princess," he spat, his voice hoarse. "But the war is far from over. You cannot hide from us forever. We will return." With that, the Draxan leader fell to the ground, defeated, but not broken. His soldiers, seeing their leader fall, hesitated, fear creeping into their ranks. Zilara stood tall, her breath coming in heavy gasps, but her eyes never left the remaining Draxan soldiers. "We will fight until the very end," she declared, her voice full of defiance. "This artifact will not fall into your hands. Not now, not ever." Jake stepped forward, his weapon still raised. "You've lost. Leave now before we make you regret staying." The Draxan soldiers exchanged nervous glances, and without another word, they began to retreat, dragging their wounded leader with them. Zilara's gaze never wavered as they disappeared into the darkness, the tension in the air slowly dissipating. Once the last of the Draxan had left, Zilara lowered her blade, her heart still pounding with adrenaline. The battle had been fierce, but they had won. The artifact, whatever it was still theirs. Jake turned to her, his face tired but resolute. "That was too close," he said, wiping the sweat from his brow. "Are you okay?" Zilara nodded, though she could feel the exhaustion settling in. "I'm fine, but we need to make sure they don't come back." Jake glanced toward the artifact on the pedestal, its glow flickering softly in the dim light. "Agreed. We need to figure out exactly what it does, and how we can protect it." Zilara stepped forward, her hand hovering above the artifact. As her fingers brushed against its surface, she felt a strange warmth spread through her palm. The power within it surged again, as if recognizing her touch. She hesitated for a moment before gently lifting it from the pedestal. The artifact was small, but its weight felt heavy in her hands, heavy with responsibility, with the potential to change everything. She knew that this was only the beginning of a much larger fight. The Draxan would be back, and there was no telling what other dangers lurked in the shadows, but Zilara had made a promise. She had vowed to protect her people, her world, and the galaxy itself. With Jake by her side, she knew that together they could face whatever came next. The battle for the artifact was over, but the war was just beginning.